Emily! You look lovely.
Oh, thanks.
You look really nice.
I'm going to go to the gym.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how your assessment of this lens is going and whether you think you'll sign off on it?
This one?
Yeah, this one.
How much is it?
But look at all these ones that I could sell.
Let's just see what happens, shall we?
Yeah, but I can sell all of these. This whole... Emily, Emily! Hello everybody and welcome to another video sponsored by Lumix, and today I wanted to do like a Casey Neistat type thing. You know, the ones where he sits at his desk and he's doing like mail time, but he's also talking to camera. I can't really do mail time myself because, well, the only mail I get is bills and pizza menus, so it wouldn't really work. So what I thought I'd do instead is just sort of clean my gear, which is not as exciting, but, well, it's the only thing I could think of. Now, the other day I was in Wales doing some more testing in the mountains with this, the 10-25, a lens I absolutely love. And usually on days like that, particularly days where I'm not filming, I have a lot of time to think. Lots of time to think about things that I don't get to think about whenever I have an internet connection. And on that day, the thing that I was thinking about was the last Instagram DM that I read before I got out of the car, which was very similar to a lot of other Instagram DMs and emails and stuff I get. And it was all about professional photography and advice for professional photography. Now, a lot of the time, when I have time, I try and give some advice on professional photography. So things like licensing, whether or not you should focus on stock, pricing, how to get in touch with art directors, how to work with agencies, whether you should rent or buy gear for particular shoots, contracting, what else? Building portfolios, marketing yourself, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I try and give my advice on that kind of thing. The thing is, I've started to wonder over the past sort of 8, 9, 10 months or so whether or not I am the right person to do that, whether or not I should be giving that advice, because for that period of time I've not really been working as a professional, working, gigging, commissioning photographer. I've basically just been a YouTuber. Not a cool YouTuber. So, since the turn of the year, or just before that, I've not been actively seeking out photography work or pitching for photography work. What I've been doing instead is taking photos, largely. Now, as I've said before, when you are a professional photographer, the amount of time you spent taking photos is so small, it's untrue. Like, I would spend more time hoovering than taking photos when I was doing it professionally, and that's because you spend a lot of time, as I've said all this before, you spend a lot of time doing like emails and contracts and pitching and lots of other stuff that doesn't involve holding a camera and trying to be creative with it. And the problem is that even when you do have time to try and be creative with your camera, you're usually working off a brief which is not anyone's creative baby, and that's because you're usually working for an agency who've got their ideas, they're working for a client who've got their ideas, which is usually a marketing team who are feeding up to suits who've got their ideas, and then by the time you get it back and you want to put your ideas into it, it's just this big like congealed horrible thing that people like but nobody loves it because it's not their own, and that's even before you've started trying to fulfill it. So I don't really like that process. I've just realised I'm not doing any cleaning, which... So, ever since enough of you have been kind enough to watch my videos, and some of you have bought my book, which is still available by the way, I think I bought a few too many of them, but it's fine, or buy prints, that kind of thing. Lots of new prints coming soon, by the way. Ever since that's been happening, I've made the conscious decision to, well, to just focus on that really, rather than doing work that means I don't get to take many photos. Now, the advantages of doing YouTube versus client work are largely obvious. Number one is you get to work on the kind of things that you want to work on and with the people that you would like to work with. And that's just wonderful because you don't really have a boss. I just kind of do what I want to do, and then people either like it or they don't. But nobody tells me before I do it whether or not I can do it. If that makes sense. Number two It's oddly a more secure living than freelancing, I reckon, because when you're freelancing, typically you're kind of waiting for emails, hanging around every day for emails for maybe 1, 2, 3 projects a month, depending on how big they are. And so a lot of the time, your livelihood hangs on a handful of emails every month or two. And if they don't turn up when you're wanting them to turn up, that can be quite stressful. But with YouTube, in essence, you've essentially got like lots and lots of what I'd call micro clients, because you're watching this video and that in essence is like a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of a little bit of money that goes towards me being able to earn a living from it. And obviously there are fluctuations in that, you know, the views go down, views go up, views go down, views go up. But it's not like hanging around for an email that you don't know whether or not is gonna turn up. It's not anywhere near as stressful as that, I wouldn't have said. So it definitely feels more secure. Whether or not it is or not, I don't know, but it feels that way. Number 3, it feels very much like a community. I reckon my favourite thing about YouTube, without question actually, is the comments section. I think it's also the worst part of YouTube, but mostly I think it's the best part because often, I'd say the vast majority of the time, I work on my own. So hearing what people make of my videos or what people think of certain topics or just being able to have conversations with people, either in the comment section or in emails or when I meet some of you, that is just my favourite part of the whole process. And you don't really get that sort of feedback or that sort of connection with people when you're doing client work, I don't think. So that's probably my favourite part of doing this versus that. And number 4, I don't have to work on things that I don't want to work on, which actually is exactly the same as the thing I said at number 1. So scrap that, just 3 things. And it's small wonder, therefore, that it's becoming much, much more popular. I mean, if you look at something like landscape photography, that as a genre of YouTube channels, I mean, I reckon there's about 3,000 new landscape photography YouTube channels every day. And for those of you who've asked me about that, it's mostly, I think, because landscape photography in particular is quite difficult to sell. And I mean, the nature of those photos means that you're not often going to have products in them, for example. So there's a very limited number of clients who might be willing to pay for that kind of work outside of kind of tourism boards and tourism agencies and that kind of thing, which means that if you're a landscape photographer, things like YouTube are by far the best way to try and make a living from it. So that's why it happens to be the case with landscape photography. But across all genres, there's loads and loads of YouTube channels popping up because it's a brilliant way to try and earn a living from photography. And that's great because it means that photography is flourishing, and hopefully it means that we'll all have more and more photography friends as time goes on, which is lovely because, as I say, I work mostly on my own and it's nice to talk to people now and then, you know. There are disadvantages though to the YouTube stuff I've found. Number 1, you have to edit videos, which I've found to be the thing that I just despise most about anything that I've ever done actually in work. I don't know why it is. I mean, some people love it. I hate it. I think because it's basically all-encompassing. Like when I edit photos, which is one of my favourite things to do in the world, I can also at the same time listen to music or listen to podcasts or the shipping forecasts if I wanted to, or sport. I could watch sport at the same time in the background. You can't really do that with video editing because it's like all-encompassing. It's sound and what's the other one? Vision. I think particularly when it's your own face and voice that you're having to sit over hours and hours and hours and watch and edit, that's just... ugh. Number 2, it definitely distracts from my photography. I found that the vast majority of photos that I take that I'm really proud of happen when I'm not also thinking about filming or filming at all. And yeah, that's been interesting to note. And it does make sense because when you're putting together a video, you're worried about whether you've got enough B-roll and is the story coming together and have I got this shot and have I said this yet and all that kind of stuff. And you're not concentrating on the conditions and your photos, which is, as I say, it makes sense, but it's not great for this channel. Really. Number 3, can't remember what stuff I've cleaned now. We'll have to start again. Number 3 is you spend far too much time worrying about numbers that you really shouldn't worry about. Things like subscribers and views and all that kind of stuff. Because in reality, things like that really have very, very little bearing on things like your earnings, for example, in this space. Because what really counts is finding people who absolutely love your stuff, not just people who are intrigued by a thumbnail and might watch 5 minutes of a video or might watch one video in every 10. What you want is people who love your stuff and who might buy like a book or a print, for example. And YouTube or stats in general are not very good at showing what those people are thinking of your stuff. So looking at the numbers, I find, is more often than not a waste of time. And number 4, you spend too much time looking at comments, I think, which doesn't really make sense because I said comments is the best thing, and it is 99% of the time, but there's always sort of 1% which is not good. And I'm all for constructive criticism, but sometimes there's just people that just, oh, you know the sort. In fact, someone once said to me, someone I really respect, said, if you were in a room with 100 people, and not like 100 nice people at a wedding, like with all like-minded people and stuff, like a cross-section of society, type 100 people, then there would always be one who was an absolute... And it's the same on the internet. Like, there'll always be one person who's just a complete... And actually, you do find that in client work from time to time too. Although I never had anybody call me a in client work. So, there's that. Anyway, I say all that to say that, yeah, for the time being at least, I've decided to focus on YouTube, and therefore I do kind of wonder whether or not my advice on professional photography is as valid as maybe this channel leads people to believe, you know? So that's just been on my mind recently, and whether or not I should give advice. Not so much of an issue at the moment, because as I say, my advice is only sort of 8 or 9 months old. But as time goes on, I wonder if I should maybe sort of pass on my advice or not, because it might not be the best. So I thought I'd make a video about that, essentially, which is what this has been, and I thought I'd be able to get some good lens cleaning done at the same time, but I don't know what I've done and what I've not. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully if you do want to leave a comment today, it can be the sort of comment that inspires Emily to maybe let me buy that lens. By the looks of things though, it's going to take some doing. See you next time.